I really am at a loss for words to what I should say to acknowledge this very special award. It's not something that I ever dreamed of, never once thought about for 5 seconds. And I'm humbled and very happy to receive it, not for me personally. I don't look at this as a personal award to me, I really don't. I look at this as a recognition from ABOTA that the work of trying to save people who were the victims of fraternity hazing incidents is a worthwhile cause. That's the way I take this award, that there are people out there that recognize that this is good work and it needs to be done. You know, most people have no clue as to how bad the fraternity hazing problem is in our country. A lot of people think, I talked to my father about it, he's 94, he's still around, he's sharp. He thought that they stopped hazing in the 1950s. And he said, when I got hazed, he said, they took me in a car to the woods and took off my shoes and took away the money, and it was cold and we had to find a way to get back to the campus. That was hazing in those days. And if you have children, sons primarily, because it really is a fraternity thing way more than a sorority thing. If you have sons that are going to go off to college, if you have grandchildren that are going off to college, if you have relatives or friends that are going off to college, this should concern you. Since the year 2000, over 100 fraternity pledges have died as a result of fraternity hazing in the United States. Think about that, over 100 since the year 2000. And don't think that it can't happen to your son or your grandson or your friend because he's too smart, or he came from too good a family, or he goes to too good a school. Because I could talk to you all night long about really smart kids who are dead from fraternity hazing. Kids from Ivy League schools and prominent big schools and unknown little schools and poor kids and rich kids and everybody in between. And if I have the list of 100 with their names and the schools, and they're all dead. And recently, somebody from Miami, Ransom Everglades, a very sophisticated, prominent, big-time private school, he went to Cornell. If you looked at his life and his resume, you'll never, ever see a high school graduate more impressive than this guy. And he went off to Cornell in late August, and he never made it home for Thanksgiving because they hazed him. And the next day they found his body at the bottom of a gorge in Ithaca, New York. And these stories go on and on. Dan mentioned that 2 weeks ago, the governor of Missouri just signed a law called the Danny Santulli Act, which is identical to a law that we did in Florida years ago, named after Andrew Coffey, who died at FSU. It's called Andrew's Law. But in Missouri, 2 weeks ago, when the governor signed it, what it does is just what the Florida law does. And it says, if you are at a fraternity party and you witness hazing and you see that somebody's in trouble because of the hazing, they're really in trouble, regardless of what your role was in the hazing, if you're the first person to call 911, and you stay on the phone with the police or fire rescue and you give them the information they need, and you stay on the scene when they get there to tell them what they need, you will be immune under the state's criminal hazing statute from prosecution. Now, when I presented that law to the Florida legislature and testified before the Senate in Florida, one of the legislators on the committee raised his hand and he said, let me get this straight. You're proposing, potentially, to give immunity under the criminal hazing statute to the fraternity member who bought the booze, gave it to the pledge, made him drink it, And now you're proposing to give him immunity from criminal prosecution under the hazing statute. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what I'm proposing. Because I said, ask any parent who has lost their son to hazing, and they will all tell you the same thing. They would much rather have their son back than prosecute the person who did it. And as a result, it passed the Florida legislature unanimously, and it was signed into law by Ron DeSantis. In Missouri, where Danny Santulli was a freshman at Mizzou, University of Missouri, he went off to school in August. They hazed him, went through a set of facts identical to a bunch of other cases, and he got so drunk that they threw him on a couch and he slid off face first. And these guys were among the dumbest fraternity guys I've ever seen, because there were 22 surveillance cameras going full time in the frat house. So we know exactly who did what and when they did it. So as a result of a blood alcohol of 0.45, he stopped breathing because he aspirated on his own vomit. And nobody called 911 because they were afraid they'd get criminally prosecuted. So they eventually threw him in the back of a car, drove him to the hospital. People ran out from the hospital because they called on the phone ahead of time, ran out, resuscitated him with CPR, got the heart restarted, but because he was deprived of oxygen for so long, he's now left permanently blind. He cannot walk, cannot talk, cannot care for himself, and he'll be that way for the rest of his life. So we now have a law in Missouri named after him that says the exact same thing as the Florida law. So my parting words to you are, A, thank you so much for this award. I don't really take this personally at all. To me, it's a recognition that these insane hazing problems must stop. And every state in America has an anti-hazing law. Every major fraternity in the country has an anti-hazing policy. Every major university has an anti-hazing policy. So you can't pass more laws to stop it, because all the laws are on the books and all the rules and regulations are where they're supposed to be, but yet it continues. And it's worse than ever. So there has to be another way to stop it, so that kids who go off to school in August come home for Thanksgiving in November. And the way we can do that is we have to enforce the existing laws much better. And we need universities to be much tougher on the guys who do this, and they're not tough enough. And too many prosecutors won't file charges when they should. In the Cornell case, Antonio Tsialas from Ransom, when he died at the bottom of the gorge in the Cornell case, we know exactly what the hazing consisted of, and the prosecutor refused to file a charge against anybody. So it sends all the wrong messages. So we're out there trying to change this one state at a time with a law that incentivizes people to call for help when they see that somebody's in big trouble. And that's what I've been working on for a long time. I'm working on it all the time. I work on it till I can't do it anymore. But I accept this award with grateful thanks for the recognition, but I accept it on behalf of the victims and their families, and I accept it on behalf of all the people who are going to try to stop this from happening in the future. So thank you very much.